we're going to look at continuing with some of my norms, right? This is how I built up our live for the podcast. And if you don't know who we are, right? If you look up what's the best podcast on affordable housing investments, what's the best podcast on affordable housing investments? If you look that up, you will see our podcast that pops up. Oh, did I go through? Oh, maybe I want to update it. Nope, there you go. There you can find us. All right. So this is going to be good. We're going to go through and talk about properties in North Carolina. And just for those folks that have not seen the podcast, I've had plenty of podcast episodes on our YouTube, youtube.com/@Fai He. Oh, we've had plenty of podcasts about Luke. That was a good one about North Carolina's. And I had Mike Caggiano on about North Carolina as well. I mean, just tons of podcasts about all these little areas. And we even covered some contractors that were in those areas specifically. So, oh, this is a good one. Section 8 condos, right? And today I'm going to show you how I would analyze a condo specifically. So here's a property that I filtered in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm looking at properties no more than 200 grand. And I'm looking at properties that are townhomes or condos that have been on the market for less than 7 days. And I came across this property, 3704 Cotswold Terrace, Unit 2B, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27410. And when I looked at this property, for the most part, the floors look great. The paint looks great. I mean, it's pretty much rent ready, if you ask me. Now, the interesting part is that's a bedroom. That's a bedroom, right? 2 different bedrooms. 2 baths. 2 baths always rent out better than 1 bath. Now, the interesting part is, how does this come in? Is that a supply closet? How do people come in here? So that must be the door then, I'm guessing, because then this is so that must be the entrance. Or no, that seems too small because you kind of come through this and you see this entrance. What I'm trying to figure out is like, okay, what is it? Is this a living room? Is this a dining room? Because at 1,200 square feet, you can almost argue that maybe there's space for you to add an addition. Oh, this must be the front door. Okay, if that's the front door, and this is the dining room, it's like, could I have just put in an extra room here and call it a 3-bedroom property because that's how Section 8 views it? Now, it's not going to be the biggest bedroom, that's for sure, but at least there's an opportunity here that I don't want to just go and miss. But it's unlikely that I will turn this into 3-bedroom because then I think functionally wise, this room is plenty big, right? Because this, excuse me, I'm assuming that's a master bedroom. I wonder if you could just turn this into a bedroom, like this little section right here, because then you still have everything. It's almost like you turn this into like additional bedroom with its own fireplace. But that's just my opinion. But hey, let's take a look at Greensboro Housing Authority 2025 payment standards. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to get my rental estimates for this property? When I see, this is so interesting. Gemini just like does something different. Great. So you can see right here that the 2025 payment standards for Greensboro Housing Authority is $1,247 for a 2-bedroom or $1,607 for a 3-bedroom, right? Pretty big difference there of about $350 in monthly rent based on the bedroom size. That's the only reason why I thought about, hey, could we have added an extra bedroom for an extra $350 a month in rent? Now, after you get that, you want to compare that with one more number, and that's the market rent. You want to go to affordablehousing.com. You want to go to the market rent estimator. You want to plug in the address right here, plug in the bedroom count, free estimate, and you want to put in 2-bedroom. Two. Oops, the wrong button here. Wait for it to load. 1 bedroom is $1,150. 2-bedroom in this area is $1,400, and $1,400 is for 10 units within a 0.23 mile radius. That gives me pretty good idea that, hey, I could probably get $1,400 on the market, or at the very minimum, I know I can get $1,250 for a 2-bedroom rent in this area, right? And this is all within a 0.25 mile radius. So I'm assuming it's for other condos in this area. So it's market. Interesting. So now let's go ahead and analyze this deal, right? Because now I got some decent numbers here with the numbers. So this property is listed for 175 grand. And for those of you that want to follow along and analyze alongside with me, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the get deal analysis tool, plug in your name, email, your phone number. That's the fastest way for you to get a copy of the spreadsheet. All right. So now we're going to plug in some more numbers here. I'm going to go here, update my rehab number. For my rehab, I don't think I need to do much on this property. So when I go to my rehab calculator, normally for single family homes, I would have about $1,500 set aside for our roof repairs. But because this is a condo, right? This is one of the advantages of buying a condo is, yeah, there's a monthly HOA fee, but it also lowers your insurance expenses and it spreads this big capital expenditure item of a thing called the roof and your siding across multiple units. So that's the advantage, right? So at 249, that is assuming that some of that money is being set aside for the roof repairs. That's why I'm not putting in $1,500 for the roof repairs like I typically do for a single family home underwriting deal. So let's keep going. Interior painting. I don't think I need to repaint in this house, but at 1205, I'll just do equals 1205 divided by 5. Let's just assume I need to do touch-up paint on about 20% of the property just before I get it rented. The property has mostly LVP except for carpet in the bedroom. So I'm not going to assume, maybe I'll assume I replace the carpet with LVP in one of the bedrooms of about 250 square feet. But that's all I'm doing for now, $8 a square foot. Now, I don't need to do anything else for my cabinets. The kitchen looks fine. I'm assuming I need to put in 2 toilets of high pressure assisted toilets to prevent any sort of clogged toilet calls, right? I have pressure assisted toilets at my properties right now, and I've never had a clogged toilet call. So I want to keep it that way because if you send a plumber out there on an emergency basis, let's say it costs you $200, $300, I mean, then you got to factor in all the time lost. Maybe you had to buy a new toilet after that. That's worth $300. So I might as well get this all done right up front and just prevent those clogged toilet calls. That's my preference. And I'm not sure that's your cup of tea, but that's it for me. Don't need a cage for the HVAC because that's already in unit. So for this property, I don't need to do a bathroom renovation, so I can zero that out. So for this property, I will set aside just a little bit of money, and I don't even have to do it today, but I'll set aside some money for about $45 for this property. Great. Now that I have that for $4,500, let's plug in my rent. So I have $1,400 for my monthly rent for the market rent right now. Let's see what my taxes are based on the rental estimate or the payment calculator, which is $145 right here, $145. The monthly insurance here is 63. So I'll do equal 63 times 1.2. So I'm adding a 20% premium because I'm assuming it's more costly to insure an investment property versus a primary residence property. And I'm assuming that the estimate on the reference payment calculator is for a primary residence property only because insurance companies view it as a riskier asset, all right? For maintenance, typically I have 10, 11% for my single family homes. I'm lowering this to 5% because I'm paying a hefty $249 of HOA fee in B34, right? This HOA fee helps put aside some money for the roof, other big repairs. So that's why I'm comfortable having a lower expense item. It can't be zero because you can still do stuff, but that's how I'm more comfortable leaving a lower a reserve because this also serves as a reserve amount. For my property management expenses, I'm assuming 10%. I'm setting aside 10% of my rent every single month for property management expenses. And I got 5% for vacancy. So that gives me $70 for vacancy because guess what? Someone's going to move out of your home eventually at some point. So you must set aside this money right now. Now, if I do a 25% down payment, right? My down payment is going to equal to my B4, which is my asking price, times my down payment percentage of 25%. Today, your interest rates are probably close to like 7 to 7.25. So I'm just using that as an estimate for now. And if that is the case, after about 2.5% closing costs, as a 2-bedroom property, and you rent it out for $1,400, you'll be negative $245 a month of cash flow after all those expenses, right? And here's where people make the mistake. A lot of people don't put in property management expenses. A lot of people don't put in maintenance or vacancy. But why would you not put that in? Especially if you have a long-term buy and hold property, you know that at some point you're going to have to replace something. So you have to put this money aside right now, today, because otherwise you're lying to yourself. You are underestimating your expenses, and in turn, you are overestimating your profitability because of that fact. So please don't be that person. Just do it right. Do it right from the beginning. All right. So let's say this was a 3-bedroom. I wonder what that would get on affordablehousing.com. That's a 3-bedroom. Let's see what that would do. 1,500. So you're not getting that much left for an extra bedroom now anymore, at least on the market. So here's what I'm doing. Let's play around with the numbers. If I were to say I'm shooting for a 8% return on my capital, because I mean, if you're looking at like certificate deposits, which is like a very relatively risk-free investment, you're getting like 3.25%. So you don't double that return. I mean, is it really worth all the effort and time that you're putting into it? So let's say I'm going for 8% return. What do I need to buy this property for, assuming everything else stays constant, for me to achieve an 8% return in E9? Let's go to 100 grand. Boom. You had to buy this property for 90 grand. Does that mean you get this property for 90 grand when it's listed for 175? I mean, probably not. But hey, at least now you know, right? That is what I'm trying to share with you. How do you figure out what are the right levers for you to pull to figure out whether or not this deal is a deal for you? Right? All that stuff matters. And you have to figure out whether or not it works. Because this is only when you get the 7.8% return. Again, $45 rehab. Assuming it's a 25% down, 7.25% interest rate. Now, obviously, if this thing tripled, your expense is tripled, and you realize like, oh, it's all like terrible plumbing in the house, and your rehab tripled because you realize you got to replace all the plumbing before you get someone in there. Well, now your return lowered because then now all of a sudden you get an inspection. Now you say, hey, I can only pay 80 grand for this property, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, because I turned out when I did my inspection that all your plumbing is shoddy work, or it's old, or it's out of code. Right? This is how you take emotions out of the deal and figure out whether or not you can adjust the lever a certain way to figure out if something is a deal. This is why I'm sharing all these levers with you. All right. So let's keep on going. Now, for this property, let's see. Let's do one more scenario. Let's say your interest rate dropped from, again, let me undo the triple rehab. Let's say your interest rate dropped from 7.25% to 6.25%. And here's what we're doing. At 6.25%, your interest rate, your return just jumped up. So now all of a sudden, let's go to 100 grand. 98. Boom. So that still rounds up. That still rounds up to 7.5%. So just because your interest rate dropped a full point, you're now willing to pay $8,000 more than the last scenario. Again, assuming everything else stays constant, $14, right? 198 of cash flow. That's a 7.5% return. $45 rehab. 25%, 6.25%. All right. That deal for you? And this can happen overnight. So this is why I want to share with you how to adjust the levers up and down, because this is how you figure out if the deal is a deal for you. Because if you don't understand something, right? The 30-year mortgage interest rate is affected by two factors. It's affected by the interest rate on the 10-year treasury yield. You can look that up on anywhere. I showed that graph, but you can look it up on Finance Yahoo. Go to the 10-year yield. And you can see that at its peak, the 10-year yield probably was at about 4.8-ish right here. Boom, 4.8. And you see it's dropped off by 0.8 points. And it's also affected by what we call the spread between the 10-year yield, the treasury yield, and the 30-year mortgage interest rates. Now, historically, that spread was about 1.5 to 2%. Today, it's about 2.2-ish, just rounding here. But it's gone as high as like 3%. That's when you saw interest rates in 8% when there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. But it's gone as high as like high fives in the 80s when you heard interest rates in the teens. Wild how high it was. But hey, when your spread narrows a little bit and you have your 10-year yield that drops a little bit, you could really get half a point move overnight. So this is why you got to figure out, hey, your buying power based on your return criteria might go up by 8 grand simply because of what's happening in the headline market, what's happening in the bond market, because don't wait for the Federal Reserve to lower their rates. Follow what's happening in the bond market, because the bond traders will look at all the data way faster, such as your unemployment data, your labor data, to see if anything's happening. Because if the labor market is breaking, or you see unemployment claims going higher and higher and higher, that signals weakness in the environment. So that might lower your bond yield, right? Just think about this stuff. That's how quickly interest rates can move and affect your buying power. So don't be old and slow. Follow what's happening in the bond market, because that will have a tremendous impact on your buying power for investment properties. Just like how you saw when I dropped it in K7 from 7.25% to 6.25%, my buying power went up by $8,000 on a purchase price, assuming a 25% down. All right. Hopefully this was helpful, everybody. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm just simply showing you what I'm doing every single day to figure out and practice what makes a deal a deal. All right. I hope this is helpful, everybody. I hope you all have an amazing day. And I hope you copy my homework, right? Analyze the same deal I analyzed today, right? This is right on Redfin. I didn't pull it up from nowhere, using the same spreadsheet. And I hope you start your own YouTube channel, because at some point someone's going to ask you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? And you're like, hey, I've been looking at deals for the past 783 days. Like, might that give you some confidence that you know what you're doing? I hope so. All right. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 784 of going live. Have a good one, everybody.